Welcome back everyone to the Weekly Mailbox, weekly Q&A over here on the F1 Reviews channel. If you've got any questions for next week, chuck them in the comments below. But let's just get into the first question. No messing around this week, and the first question is, what is your favourite track and why? Easy question, easy answer. Some people might be looking at Monaco, you might be looking at Silverstone, Monza, but for me, Spa de Francorchamps is the best track on the grid, the longest circuit on the calendar. And you know what, over the past few years it's not done the best races across the whole season. It wasn't in my top 5 from last season, but it has a special place in my heart. When I was growing up, big Kimi Raikkonen fan, he always excelled at Spa, and so for that I always had a bit of a love for it. As I grew up learning about Eau Rouge, the Kemmel Straight, Blanchimont, Pouhon, just some fantastic corners and complexes across the circuit, really became a circuit that I loved. And then of course in 2015 I managed to go there, my first ever Grand Prix weekend, and we went because it was my favourite track, and that race, as I said last week in the Weekly Mailbox, was my favourite race of all time, the 2015 Spa Grand Prix. So for that reason, yeah, Spa for sure is my favourite track of all time, and that is why. Moving on to the second question from, oh actually, sorry, I forgot to say there, that was from Panda X Sweet, so I apologise there, but yeah, thank you for your question. Moving on then to David Pesha's question, a little bit more in detail, a little bit more complex. What do you think about the future of Formula 1? How will the cars look like, the halo to be replaced by the aero screen or the shield, etc. So, a question focused around the halo is something I haven't had yet. If you don't know, I'm not the biggest hater of the halo, to be perfectly honest with you. I was in the early days, but now I'm already used to it, and I think on some cars it doesn't look dreadful. I think on the Formula 2 cars as well, for example, they look quite cool, quite special. So the halo, I'm not the biggest hater. I wouldn't really care if it went, but I don't really care that it's here. I think the onboard shots are dreadful, and I think that is the first place to start. And when looking for a solution, we should be looking at that as well. So it will be very, very difficult. Now, I think if you look at the prototype cars for like the 2040 Formula 1 cars that Renault have produced, Red Bull have produced, they've all got some sort of enclosed cockpit, sort of an aero screen. I think that's the way it's eventually going to go, as much as I think we'd all love an open cockpit. Unfortunately, I don't think that's ever really going to happen again. In IndyCar this season, they have introduced the aero screen or something very, very similar, and I think it did look pretty cool on the Formula 1 cars. Again, I don't think it's as good as the open cockpit, but I think the aero screen will be eventually when it will be put into Formula 1. Obviously tomorrow we have the blueprints for the 2021 regulations, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's something to do with head protection there. I don't think the halo will change until around 2021. I'd be very surprised if they changed it next season, and so the halo I think will be here for the next few seasons. So I think that's answered your question. Obviously it's a very broad question at the beginning about the future of F1, but I do have a video completely all about the future of F1 coming out very, very shortly, so hopefully that'll answer more of your question in that video. But in regard to the halo and the aero screen, yeah, the halo is going to be gone eventually, but it won't be soon. It won't be soon, and I think for the next at least 2 seasons, we're going to have to get used to the halo for sure. I think maybe they could change the halo a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer. I think the big issue for me is that central pillar at the front. I think that's pretty horrible, and so could they do 2 pillars either side? I don't know if that would perhaps block the driver's vision even more for passing cars. I don't know. It's something that we're going to have to get used to, like I say, and it won't be going away anytime soon. So that'll be one I'd love to see what you guys think about, definitely to do with the halo as well. But yeah, aero screen I think will be in the future of Formula 1 for sure, pretty much 100%, definitely. Thank you, David, for your question. Moving on to question 3 of the week, Scandinavian. He hasn't been in it since the first week, and Scandinavian, one of the OGs of the channel, he's back this week, and he asks, if you could have dinner with 3 F1 drivers, who would they be and why? Now, I've had to think about this one. I really have. It's a very, very difficult one, and Scandinavian did put his drivers in the comments as well. And I saw some of you other guys, you know, putting up things as well. I saw lots of Schumachers, lots of Sennas, Fangios were in there. They were the main three, the big names, Hamilton, Vettel. They were the big ones in there. But I've been thinking about it, and I've gone a bit different, to be perfectly honest. And first of all, I'm going with Jackie Stewart. I'm not the biggest fan of Jackie Stewart, but what he did for the sport in the 60s and the way he changed the sport, the look on the safety. I know it sounds daft, but he really did push for that. You know, it's not like Jackie Stewart's some random geezer. He is a world champion. In his 9 seasons in F1, he picked up 3 world championships and came runner-up twice. So, almost 5 world championships across the 60s and 70s. But I really think it would be a really interesting talk just to see why he wanted so much of a change in the sport in safety. And, you know, I did watch a documentary about, I think it was called, about the 60s and 70s in Formula 1. It was called The Killer Years, I believe. And it really resonated with me, did that particular documentary. Focused, like I say, around the 60s and 70s, and Jackie Stewart's input on the sport, and so for sure he would definitely be on there. I think that'd be a really interesting talk to have. And like I say, he is a 3-time world champion, so again, that's even interesting to have in there. So yeah, Stewart is number 1. Number 2, again, it's very difficult. I think Schumacher, you've got to look at. You know, Michael Schumacher, arguably one of the best drivers of all time, arguably one of the dirtiest drivers of all time. So would I want him there? He's definitely a candidate I would consider. I definitely would have Kimi Räikkönen there. Like I say, a big fan of Kimi Räikkönen. He's not my number 1 at the moment, but just going through, again, he's a world champion, and his journey through McLaren, why he decided to leave McLaren, how it felt to be that world champion after 1 season at Ferrari, taking Ferrari back to glory, then his decision to retire in 2009, quite early, and then his decision to come back in 2012, then his split with Lotus, and his return back to Ferrari. I think his story in Formula 1 is incredible, and so, like I say, Räikkönen and Stewart for sure, and that third one, yeah, I think I will go Schumacher, just to find out so many things, you know. Again, 1996, 97 World Championships, how he lost out on them. You look at his dominance throughout the early 2000s, all those sort of things, his retirement and then return back to Mercedes, all of those sort of things would be so interesting to learn about. And so those are the 3 I'd go for. But other names I would definitely consider. Fernando Alonso, that is a very, very interesting one. But I did want to pick one sort of in different eras, if you will. Jim Clark, you know, obviously I'm a huge Lotus fan, and so Jim Clark would definitely be one that I would love to have met. Multiple world champion himself, British, seemed like a fantastic guy and a really quick racing driver, and it was such a shame that he died so early on. So many fantastic people, but yeah, my 3, Jackie Stewart, Michael Schumacher, and Kimi Räikkönen. Thank you for your question, Scandinavian. Good one there. Enjoyed answering that one, I really did. But the final question then of today, we're only doing 4 today because they're fairly long ones, and this one comes from Julio, and it's something that no one else has asked anywhere near this sort of question, and it's to do with the F1 games, and a really, really interesting question, especially if you're into racing games, and that is, what if Filifoni Digital or Turn 10 Studios purchased the rights to develop F1 games? Now, this is the 10th year of Codemasters games. They're the ones who currently do it. We've also had EA do it in the past, and also Psygnosis did some of the best F1 games of all time, in my opinion. F1 2006, F1 2002 was my first ever F1 game, and they were fantastic. And so they would definitely be ones to look at when we're looking at this sort of question. Now, first of all, I'm going to say that I'd love to do a separate video on this about the future of F1 games, but I will answer your question here. And Codemasters now, like I say, have had the license for 10 years, and for sure it's improved since their first game, F1 2009. But they're not the best company in the world. Graphics aren't the best, we know that. You know, you look at Gran Turismo, you know, you look at Forza, those graphics are unbelievable. Those racing mechanics are incredible. I think, for me, for starts, Codemasters have embedded themselves in F1 now, and for that break to happen, it would be very, very, very unlikely. I don't think either that we would have two studios making an annual F1 game. I say that because in 2002 we had F1 2002 by Psygnosis and F102 by EA, so I don't think we'll have that. We'll only have one F1 game. Let's theorise about F1 2020, let's say, only because Codemasters are pretty much, they're done on 2018, and I imagine they'll have 2019, but 2020, for sure, it'd be great if Polyphony or Turn 10, I can't say, is it Polyphony? I don't really know how to pronounce that one. It's a bit of annoying, that one for sure, but Turn 10, obviously, that's pretty straightforward, but their games are great. The only thing for me is that they lack replayability, and I don't know if that's just because I'm not as big a fan as just normal street racing, for example. You know, I do prefer Forza Motorsports over Forza Horizon. And if they made a Formula 1 game, how would they make that career mode? Would they be good at the longevity of it? You know, also EA, they're a company to consider as well, making a return to F1. They've got the Formula E license, and so I'm praying that they actually release a full Formula E game rather than Real Racing 3 that they keep using, which is just ridiculous. But I think if they did purchase the rights and Codemasters lost it, yes, we're going to have a completely different F1 game, but I think it would lose a bit of its edge. You know, I think the F1 games we know now, we're comfortable with them, and since we've moved on to the next gen of consoles, there's been a real grounding of games. 2015 perhaps the weakest in a long time, but the 2016 jump in progression in the overall game was amazing. Really was. And 2017, I think, has been the best F1 game of all time. So Codemasters are on a real roll now, and the fact that they're getting in YouTubers and members of the community to take part in the beta, to go down to the studios and help develop the game, that is what they need to be doing. And so I think Codemasters, yes, there's loads of things I'd love for them to improve on, for sure. I did a whole, almost an hour video talking about it last month, and they do a lot of things wrong. But they do a lot of things right, and you look at their workforce, which is around 400 employees, that's almost the same as Turn 10 Studios. And I don't see Turn 10 Studios producing a Forza game and a Formula 1 game in 1 year, every year. That's not going to happen. And so, yes, it'd be great to see, you know, graphics improvements, driver mechanics improvement, customization improvements. I think for now and the foreseeable future, Codemasters will hold that F1 license, and I think it'll only go away if a big company comes in for the swoop. And I'm talking your Activisions, your EAs, those sort of things, and I don't think they're going to be looking into racing games, and so Codemasters, I think, will have the license for a very long time. But looking at your question, what if they did? I don't think it would be as good as a Codemasters game. I really don't. Like I say, I do struggle to play a Gran Turismo or a Forza for a whole year. F1 games, I happily jump on, and whether that's because it's an F1 game or that's how Codemasters have made the game, it's really, really difficult to tell. But all the licensing issues and everything as well, that's something that Codemasters over the years have slowly managed to make us customise more and more. Obviously, they've only just let us change our driver numbers, which is a huge change, but a real welcome one. And yes, the sport has obviously changed with allowing drivers to pick their numbers, but little things that they're slowly letting us do. There was one point as well where your avatar's overalls would have the wrong driver's name on. You would be, say your name was F1 Reviews, but on your race suit it would say Sergio Perez on it. It was so daft, but they've slowly managed to get more and more into the game. And I think while Liberty Media are coming into the sport, they're new still, Liberty, and they're really trying to improve the game. And I know it sounds daft, but you just look at the esports tournaments they're already including. Obviously, Hype Energy as well. They are now the official sponsors of the AOR League. They're one of the main sponsors of Force India F1 team. So there's a real focus now coming on the game, and with more and more people and big names and companies looking at the game will only get better. So I've got big hopes for 2018, and hopefully that has answered your question, Julio. And that is the end of the weekly mailbox. Only 4 questions this week. There were a few more in the comments, but I've decided to keep some back just in case in future weeks we have less questions or whatever. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode of the weekly mailbox. If you've got any questions for the future, chuck them down in the comments below. I'm now on Twitter as well, so if you want to tweet me your questions, you can do. That'll also be in the description down below. This weekend is race week. Incredible stuff. Formula 1 and Formula 2 will battle it out in Bahrain in the desert. Round 2 of F1, round 1 of Formula 2. We've also got Super GT starting this weekend as well, with Jenson Button making his debut for the Honda NSX team. But guys, like I say, hopefully you have enjoyed as always. Like, subscribe, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.